I am here with Dr. Philip Ovadia. Dr. Ovadia, introduce yourself.
Hi, so Dr. Philip Ovadia, heart surgeon, metabolic health practitioner now, working to keep you off my operating table.
Okay, so the top comment that I get on Instagram, YouTube, every single social media platform is, what is your LDL? So why do people care so much about LDL and only LDL?
We, and by we I mean mostly the doctors and therefore all of their patients, which is all the people, have been misled to believe this narrative that LDL, low density lipoproteins, are the most important predictor of heart disease. And the reality is that they are a lousy predictor of heart disease. It's basically a 50-50 shot. When I look at the patients that end up on my operating table, and when we look at the studies that are actually done around patients that have heart attacks and patients that need stents, we find that about half of them have a high LDL level and about half of them don't. So it's a lousy metric, but it's become the go-to metric that doctors are trained to pay attention to when it comes to heart disease.
So you heard it from a heart surgeon. It is a lousy metric. So what are good metrics that you recommend looking at?
Yeah, so we look at the basics of metabolic health. It turns out that insulin resistance is much better predictor of heart disease than LDL cholesterol. There have been studies done that have shown that 95% of patients that have heart attacks are insulin resistant if you measure it in the right way. Some simple ways to start is you can take that same cholesterol panel that your doctor is so focused on, but don't look at the LDL, look at the triglycerides and the HDL cholesterol. And if your triglycerides are high and your HDL is low, you are likely insulin resistant, and that's what you need to focus on fixing more so than your LDL cholesterol level.
Are there recommended ratios that you would like people to get to?
Yeah, so when you're working in the US units, very important, you have to be in milligrams per deciliter. So if you're outside the US and you have your labs in millimole, you got to convert them first, and you want that triglycerides divided by the HDL to be less than 1.5 ideally. Less than 2 is pretty good. Anything over 2, it's almost certain that you are insulin resistant.
Would you like to react to my labs?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay. Here you can see that I've got my vegan blood work compared side by side with my carnivore. And why don't you just share what you think?
We see, a total cholesterol level that went from 173 to 365. And of course, that would be concerning to most doctors. With that, your LDL cholesterol went from 81 to 264. And, this is something to point out, that one of the main health metrics that's used to promote and push, vegan diets is LDL cholesterol. But as I said earlier, LDL cholesterol is a very lousy predictor of heart disease risk. Many people will have heard me and others talk about, the studies that have been done looking at patients coming into the hospital with a heart attack, and that their LDL cholesterols are basically not predictive. The first data that we had around LDL cholesterol really showed that it was only meaningful if it was exceptionally high. And that really gets into probably genetic issues around familial hypercholesterolemia, which brings in non-cholesterol issues that those people are prone to. So it really is not the amount of your cholesterol that we should be looking at. It's the quality of your cholesterol that we should be looking at. Your LDL goes up. Your HDL also goes up significantly from 73 to 98. And your triglycerides, I think I've told you this before, you have the lowest triglyceride level, I believe, I've seen at 15. Certainly, probably some genetics and everything else going on there. Your hemoglobin A1C goes from 5.5 down to 4.7. Which again is an excellent improvement. We see that your ratio between your triglycerides and your HDL went from about 1.3, 1.4 to 0.15, essentially 0.17 or so. So excellent improvement there. it's really not about the amount of your cholesterol. It's about the quality of your cholesterol. And so triglyceride to HDL ratio is one of those indicators of the quality of our cholesterol.
And what I want people to really understand is it's not just about that LDL number. So we really shouldn't be saying high or low LDL. We have to look at that whole context that the LDL is in. Carnivore is great, but we can't just assume that it's going to make everything better. Find good resources, practitioners, do the deeper dive, get a full lab panel like Bella did, check your insulin levels, all of that.
Ultimately, these are the questions that people should be asking their practitioners. To be perfectly honest, many people may go to their family doctors and start asking questions, and not that your doctor isn't going to be cooperative. Your doctor maybe just doesn't understand this, doesn't know this detail, and that's when it might be worthwhile in finding another practitioner to work with, someone who does understand these nuances and can help you to get through all this information. A couple of other markers, that I'll look at to help us figure out quality of cholesterol is the VLDL measurement. If you have a lab that doesn't report VLDL, there are two ways you can estimate it off of a basic cholesterol panel. Divide your triglycerides by 5 is going to be an estimate of your VLDL. And you can also calculate what's called remnant cholesterol, which is mostly VLDL. There's a little bit of other stuff in there, but it's a kind of good enough estimate for most purposes. And to calculate remnant cholesterol, you take your total cholesterol and then you subtract your HDL cholesterol, and then you subtract your LDL cholesterol. And what's left over is what's considered your remnant cholesterol. If we do your remnant calculation, we go from 19, when you were vegan, which, like I said, right on the border of what I consider to be ideal. And now your remnant cholesterol would be 3. And so I would tell you that that's an excellent improvement. Now, your vitamin D level as a vegan was exceptionally low at 12.1. It's gotten better, 23.5, but again, I would tell you that you probably still want that to be higher. Right now, where you live, even when the sun's out for much of the year, it's going to be at too low of an angle to really be effective for vitamin D synthesis. So you're someone else that may need to supplement vitamin D. Your vitamin B12 level as a vegan, again, was very, very low. Again, common for vegans to be vitamin B12 deficient because vitamin B12 is not present in plant products. That's a concern as well. For vitamin B12, probably anything over about 750, 800 is adequate. 1,500 is certainly an excellent level. Vitamin B12 is present in plentiful amounts in animal products. So it's rare that I see a carnivore that's vitamin B12 deficient. One of the indicators of heart disease can certainly be a lack of energy, feeling tired all the time, getting winded easily when you're exerting yourself.
Speaking of lower energy, I just wanted you all to know that it doesn't always mean that you're having issues with your heart. So if you're new to carnivore or you're just a few weeks into this carnivore lifestyle, most of the times it's just a simple electrolyte imbalance. Symptoms of electrolyte imbalance include lower energy, headaches, muscle cramping, and just less endurance when you're in the gym. What you all can do to resolve this is to just salt your carnivore meals a little bit more generously. So whatever you're eating, salt it a little heavier. And if that doesn't do the trick, then I highly recommend just leaning on a high quality electrolyte supplement. This right here is the one that I recommend, specifically this raw teal colored box labeled raw unflavored from the brand Element. No stevia, no flavorings, literally just the 3 electrolytes our body needs: sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Here's what the little packets look like. They're super easy to just throw in your bag. You rip one open, pour it in whatever you're drinking, mix it up, drink it down, and you're good to go. You all can get a free sample pack like this, and it does include the raw unflavored. If you go to the URL shown on the screen, drinklmnt.com/SBGAL. Also link them down below.
I want to point out how important it is to be doing coronary artery calcium scans serially. The general attitude of the healthcare system towards coronary artery calcium scans is that they're still largely a one and done test, but seeing progression of scores is a very important predictor, especially assuming someone sticks to carnivore, low carb, whatever it is, if they're consistent in their habits, and then we get a repeat scan a year, 2 years, 3 years later, we now can truly see, okay, are things continuing to progress or not? When someone comes to me and they're like, my doctor is really, pushing me on the LDL front, LDL doesn't actually kill you. Heart attack is what kills you. And that's the concern. So let's see if you're forming plaque in your arteries or not. Metabolic disease, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance is the primary driver of plaque progression. And so that's always where I start with people. And ultimately, anything that causes inflammation in the body has the potential to, cause blood vessel damage and plaque formation. We need to consider things like autoimmune disease, certainly things like smoking. Sometimes we're getting into considerations like heavy metal toxicity or, perhaps chronic infections like chronic mold exposure or chronic Lyme disease. 2 other tests that I would recommend for anyone with coronary calcification, if they haven't been done previously, Lp(a) or lipoprotein A, which is a type of LDL particle, but it also interacts with the blood clotting system. There's a large genetic component to lipoprotein A. If you check it once and it's low, you probably can be assured that it's going to stay low the rest of your life. If you check it and it's high, it's probably something that you want to, again, talk with a good practitioner about ways that you might be able to mitigate that risk. And then homocysteine. This is another important one that doesn't really get checked on routine panels, is another risk factor for the development of heart disease. And homocysteine levels have to do with your B12 and folate metabolism and whether or not you're able to perform sort of detoxification, what we call methylation. Many people will have heard of the MTFHR mutation. That's fairly common. And so anyone with heart disease, I certainly recommend checking homocysteine. And even people without heart disease, it's probably worth checking at least once to determine whether or not you might have that additional risk factor.
If you're loving what you're learning from Dr. Philip Ovadia so far, I wanted you all to know that he'll be joining me in my 90-day carnivore challenge and will be visiting as a guest speaker. So this means that he will be able to take all questions live on Zoom from members only. Make sure you join the challenge by going to the URL shown on the screen, sbgmeetup.com. Everything is down below in the description box. See you in there. You guys also ask me every day about my skincare. What do I use for my skin to have that glow, to have that even texture? And if I were to recommend any one product that you can add to a carnivore diet, because let's be honest, the best skincare is what you eat. But this red light face mask that I have been using religiously every night as well has really made an impact on my skin, specifically in calming it down, in creating that more even texture and skin tone, especially because I've been traveling for the past 6 months straight. International travel, domestic travel, road trips, just back-to-back travel really dries out my skin and irritates it. So every night I pop this mask on, I choose the maximum, highest, strongest setting, lay down in my bed, relax, and enjoy the benefits. It's definitely not cheap. It's more of an investment for sure, but I have seen a really dramatic difference in just my overall skin health when combining this with a high-fat carnivore diet. So if you're interested in any of Bon Charge's biohacking products, I'll make sure to link them down below, and you can use the code SBGAL to save money on your order. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I'll see you in my next one. SBG out.